All right, so today we're jumping into a single chapter that acts like the grand finale for a huge section of the Bible. We're talking about Deuteronomy 26. Now, this isn't just another list of rules. Think of it as the capstone, the final, crucial instruction given to the Israelites right before they step into the Promised Land. It's their blueprint for how to live after they've received this incredible, life-changing gift. So, what does that blueprint actually look like? Let's dive in. But before we get into the ancient text, just think about this for a second. Imagine you've just been given something you've wanted, maybe waited your whole life for. A home, a new beginning, a dream you thought was impossible. What's your very first move? How do you even begin to respond to a gift that just changes everything? Well, for the ancient Israelites, this wasn't some thought experiment. This was real. After generations of being homeless, they were about to receive an entire country as a gift from God. And this chapter, chapter 26, it lays out the answer to that very question. It's a blueprint for both gratitude and responsibility, and it's all built around two really powerful ceremonies. Okay, so the first ceremony starts with something you can actually hold in your hands. Once you're in the land and you've gathered your first harvest, you take a basket of the very first fruits you've grown and bring it to the central sacred place. But here's the thing. It's not just about dropping off a basket. It comes with a script, a specific speech you have to give. You could call it a creed of remembering. And it all kicks off with this line. Just imagine that for a second. Every single farmer, standing there with their basket of fresh food, has to start their story not with their own success, not with, look what I did, but by reaching back generations to a nomadic ancestor, probably Jacob. It's this anchor, grounding them immediately in a shared and very humble past. I mean, think about the incredible contrast this sets up. The person speaking is a landed farmer. They belong. They have roots. And yet, the very first thing they have to do is identify with someone who is the total opposite, landless, a migrant, basically a foreigner. It's a mandatory act of empathy, a required reminder that says, don't you ever forget where you came from. And then, right here, something amazing happens. Did you catch it? The pronouns just shifted. It goes from my father to us and we. Just like that, the individual's family history merges into the collective story of the entire nation. My ancestor story becomes our shared trauma of slavery and our shared cry for rescue. And then, at the very end, it snaps right back. After telling the whole national story, from wandering ancestor to slavery to rescue, the individual farmer finishes with, I have brought the first of the produce. It's this beautiful structure, isn't it? I start with my personal ancestor, I merge into our collective story, and now I, personally, respond with this gift. The national history becomes the reason for my personal gratitude, right now. Now, stick with me here, because hidden inside that little speech is a fascinating detail that opens up a much bigger idea. The farmer says, God brought us to this place and has given us this land. Now, that sounds simple enough. But the difference between place and land is actually the key to unlocking how Deuteronomy thinks about holiness itself. So the text uses two very specific, distinct Hebrew phrases right next to each other. You've got hamakom hazeh, which means this place, and then haaretz hazeh, which means this land. Now the farmer is physically standing at the central sanctuary, this place, but the food in their basket comes from the entire land. So what's the relationship between the two? Is the creed saying God brought them to the temple and he gave them the country? Or is it saying God brought them to this place, which is this land? Are they two different things, or is the holiness of the place meant to describe the whole land? And here's the brilliant insight. This ambiguity is probably on purpose. Deuteronomy seems to be intentionally blurring the lines. Yeah, the central sanctuary is a uniquely holy place, but its holiness isn't meant to be trapped inside four walls. It's meant to flow outwards, making the entire land and all the people in it sacred. The whole nation becomes holy ground. That idea leads us perfectly into the second ceremony, which really shifts gears. If the first creed was all about looking back to the past with gratitude, the second one is all about responding in the present with justice. This one is all about a special tithe, or tax. For 2 years, the Israelites are supposed to bring a portion of their harvest to that central holy place, to support the clergy. But every third year, something totally different happens. That tithe does not go to the central sanctuary. It stays right there in their local towns. So who's this local tithe for? Well, look at the list. It's for the community's most vulnerable people, the local Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows. See a pattern here? These are all the people who, just like that wandering Aramaean ancestor, are landless and living on the margins. And this is where it gets really deep. The text says the whole point is for the vulnerable to eat and be satisfied. Now, that word satisfied is a huge deal. All through Deuteronomy, the one who satisfies Israel's hunger in the desert is God. So now, the people themselves are being commanded to act like God, to satisfy the needs of the poor right where they live. And that leads to this radical idea: taking care of the poor in your own community is presented as a sacred act, every bit as holy as bringing an offering to the altar at the central temple. Holiness isn't just about worship that goes up to God, it's about justice that goes out to your neighbor. So, after laying out these two core practices, one about remembering the past with gratitude, the other about acting with justice in the present, the chapter, and this whole giant law code, wraps up with this powerful mutual declaration. It's like everyone is signing a contract together. And this contract is absolutely a two-way street. First, the people declare their commitment to God. They promise to walk in His ways and obey all these laws. Then, in response, God declares His commitment to them, calling them His treasured possession. It's a covenant, a relationship sealed by promises going in both directions.
And this is the ultimate goal, the whole point. If the people live up to their side of the deal, a deal defined by both grateful worship and practical justice, then God promises to make them a consecrated people, a holy nation, a kind of beacon for all the other nations to see what a just and grateful society looks like.
So in the end, Deuteronomy 26 gives us this incredible vision. Remembering the gifts you've received is completely tied to how you give to others. And it leaves us with a question that honestly feels like it could have been written yesterday. What does it mean for holiness to be found not just in a special building, but in the streets of our own towns and in the way we actually care for our most vulnerable neighbors?